Joe Rogan. Joe, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, man. What's happening? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. We're talking UFC 209. A little bit of UFC 209 look back. What are you doing? You building a house back there, or what's going on?
No, it's just someone walking in the background. Believe it or not.
What is it, the Hulk?
Are you?
Sound that loud? That's
are you
funny.
in some
I have a weird headset on?
Alternative universe where like giants are stomping around? Where are you at?
Maybe I have one of those earpiece headsets on. Maybe it's taking too much sound from the background.
That thing picks up everything. Yeah, no, that's good. Okay. Well, yeah, UFC 209. I wanted to talk about this main event, and you said you love the fight. I wouldn't say I love the fight, but I understood why it looked the way it did. What I want to talk to you more about, whether or not it was entertaining or not, though, is a little bit of the scoring. And I know that some of the listeners are going to probably roll their eyes. They don't like the scoring discussions, but I think they're so crucial. And sometimes we get these fights that highlight certain things. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is that I saw in the broadcast when I went back and rewatched the fight that you really felt like Stephen Thompson deserved to win those first two rounds. And I'll tell you right off the bat that I thought that those two rounds, and specifically the first, was, if that's not a 10-10, then I don't think full 5-minute 10-10 rounds exist in this sport. So I wanted to get your take on why you thought Stephen Thompson definitely deserved those rounds.
Well, I actually agree with you. I agree with you, and when I say that I think he won, I think he did more, but what the number is, as far as like being able to calculate how much more he did, or if he did more, that's where the real issue lies. The real issue lies in that we have a 10-point must system that we just adopted from boxing for some strange reason. And, I know that there's new unified rules, and they're a little bit more comprehensive. And there's been some other scoring systems that have been introduced in the past, particularly, I don't know if you ever seen Doc Hamilton's half-point system.
Yep.
He had a half-point system that he developed. I think we just need to start from the ground up with a completely new scoring system that takes into account the comprehensive nature of mixed martial arts as opposed to just an individual striking sport like boxing. I mean, I don't even think the 10-point must system for striking that they use in boxing is good enough for kickboxing or Muay Thai. I definitely don't think it's good enough for when you start calculating wrestling, jiu-jitsu, submission attempts, kickboxing, elbows, knees. What is more important? Is a jab better than a takedown? A takedown that where you don't do any damage, is that as good as a leg kick? We need to quantify these things. And we haven't. And it's just one of those things we've done. Like, it's like student loan debt or something like that, just sitting in the background. We're like, oh, we'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
We need to do it. I mean, it needs to be handled. This is not a good system. And putting little tiny incremental changes to the system, little patchwork things, I don't think that helps.
Yeah.
I think the system completely needs to be revamped, and there's no reason to have a 10-point system. I think this sport is way more comprehensive, and I think they should consider something like a 100-point system or something like that, and try to figure out, start out with 100 points and try to figure out what everything means, and try to calculate what's the difference between a takedown like the first fight where Tyron Woodley took him down in the first round and got some really good ground and pound off. How much different is that than a round where a guy takes you down but you stifle all of his ground and pound? That needs to be quantified, and it's not.
Yeah, I think that I don't disagree with you, although when I try to wrap my head around how we would ever quantify those things, I just I hit a wall, man, and I can't even really I can't even think about how in which they would do that, because you bring in different experts and they'd be arguing that a takedown's worth more than a kick to the ribs or whatever the case is, and I don't know if we'd ever get there. I'm not in love with the 10-point must system either, because it has its faults, but I do think that if we use it as best as we can, then at least we're giving ourselves a shot, and that's why this fight, it highlighted it so much for me, because, as you know, under this system, one single point is so crucial. 1 point is so important. And so when we're looking at those first 5 minutes in which both guys combined for maybe 8 strikes landed, and then you're looking at your scorecard and you're like, all right, well, who won that round? I think in order to do that, you're asking yourself to make assumptions. Well, I assume that Stephen Thompson wanted to be where he was in the cage, and Tyron Woodley didn't. And that's the last thing that I want judges to ever do is to be trying to pick out things and assume things rather than just look at what's going on and score it correctly. You know what I mean?
That's a very good point. It's a very good point. And to be able to, I've got my own biases, I'm sure, which is probably one of the reasons why I thought the first round went to Thompson's, because he utilized a side kick to the body. He controlled the center of the octagon. I felt like he was doing a little bit more, but it wasn't much. And there wasn't much going on. And that's one of the big problems with that fight that a lot of people had is that it was a very high-level problem-solving event in that if Stephen Thompson made any sort of a mistake, if he rushed in, if he did anything incorrectly, Tyron Woodley has the capability to shut his lights out with one shot.
Yeah.
He knew that. And I think Woodley knew that he couldn't just charge forward because he can get countered. And Wonderboy is so good at sliding away from anything that Tyron was trying to do and countering him when he was coming in. That's his whole game. And I think that it was a fight where anything could have been a moment, but nothing happened.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Hey, it's early in 2017. What are you looking forward to this year? I know that you're a purist and you love. One of the reasons I think people love your style is that you commentate sort of the same way on the undercard. You have the same level of excitement as you do, when the main card starts. But there's got to be a few fights out there potentially this year, right? Where you're hoping. I hope that comes together. I would love to call that again. What are those matchups for you? Do you got any?
Well, I really want to see Yoel Romero get a shot at the title. And I know he's waiting. Yeah, I know. He's waiting right now for this, what I think is an interesting fight between Michael Bisping and George St Pierre. I think that's an interesting fight. I don't like it in terms of the hierarchy of the division. I think that as far as the division goes, it's not good at all. It sort of hijacks the whole situation.
So how are you gonna feel when after St. Pierre wins the title he fights Anderson Silva?
I don't think he's going to, and I don't think he's going to. I think if he wins the title, I think he's probably going to vacate it and fight someone else, another big money fight. Yeah. If I had to guess, I definitely don't know. But if I had to guess, I would think he's probably going to do that.
Well, when they're sitting up there at the press conference, I actually asked Dana White that exact question. Do you have any reservations about booking somebody to a title fight that he might not want to defend? And Dana White basically told me that, hey, we've had these conversations. We have plans. We're just not telling you them right now. My question to you is, Joe, my question to you is, and I guess that response speaks for itself to a certain extent.
That sounds like something my dad would say. We're not telling you. We know how to do it. You shut up and go to bed.
How do you feel about all this? It's something that we've been talking about a lot this year. There's interim titles everywhere you look. There's guys chasing money fights. Yeah,
I don't like it.
You think it's a slippery slope, and are you actually concerned? 100%. I guess. Are you concerned with the direction the sport's going?
I'm not concerned because there's great fighters, and you get them together and you make great fights. I'm not concerned at that, but from a purist point of view, and from someone who feels like, look, if you're going to have a champion and you're going to have these divisions where one man rules over the division, there should be a very clear hierarchy. This was something that really bothered me about the Ronda Rousey-Amanda Nunes fight. I'm like, look, you're doing all these amazing promos. They're fantastic, but you're only highlighting this one fighter. You're only highlighting Ronda Rousey. Like, the other woman is the champion. She's the champion of the world. And that's a very important distinction. And that has to be respected. And if you have a champion and you have, all these people that are waiting in line to get a shot at that champion, the person who is perceived to be the best in that division is the one who should be fighting the champion next. The champion should always be fighting the number one available challenger. Right now, that is Yoel Romero.
Yeah.
I get that George St Pierre has come back, and I get that Michael Bisping feels like he deserves a big money fight, and I agree with him. Michael's had a long career in the UFC, and he's a great fighter, and against all odds, became the UFC middleweight champion on a very short notice fight against a guy who had already beat him in the first round, and Luke Rockhold, and winds up knocking him out. All props to him. Comes back, he defends against Dan Henderson. Beats him in a decision. Good for him. It's great. I think I see Michael Bisping's point that he deserves that big money fight.
Yeah.
But as a person who deeply respects the position of champion, I think if you're gonna do this whole interim title thing, and you're gonna have guys come back after being out of the sport for 3 years and get a shot right at the title, why have championships at all? Ooh, I swore. What happens when you swear? You guys have a beeper over there?
Yeah, we got. You'll beep there.
Sorry, my apologies.
No
I guess
problem.
he's doing podcasts. But why have a champion at all? It just set up great fights. And if you're just setting up great fights, well, that's a great fight.
Yeah.
Bisping versus GSP is a great fight. But if you're going to have a title, this is the champion of the world, then the champion should be defending his title against the number one challenger in the world. And that right now is Yoel Romero. But
100%.
More people by far know who George St Pierre is and Yoel Romero, so Michael Bisping will make more money. It's a lucrative fight for George St Pierre to come back to. I think WME and whatever this, what do they call the company now? Do they still call it Zuffa? I should probably know
so.
this, huh? I work for them.
What does your check say when you get it?
I don't look at it.
Yeah, I think it's Zuffa.
I think he's got direct deposit on that.
Yeah, I'm busy, but I think that look, there's two ways I look at it. One, I look at it like, man, I can't wait to see what happens. George St Pierre versus Michael Bisping. Yeah, I'm down. If that was on pay-per-view, 100% I would buy that.
Yeah.
Like if I was just sitting at home and you told me that Bisping was going to fight George St Pierre tonight, I'd be like, all right.
Yep.
It's great. Get the popcorn. Let's get the party started. But when it comes to someone who respects the position of champion, well, the champion should really be fighting the number one challenger. And, Michael says that he's going to fight George, and then 6 weeks later he said he'll be ready to fight Yoel Romero right afterwards. But I wouldn't believe that if it was Yoel Romero. When was the last time anybody ever did that? Has anybody ever defended the title against a former world champion and an all-time great, and then 6 weeks later defend the title again? Come on, get out of here. That's not happening.
I'm sure that Michael Bisping is going to get the biggest payday of his career and want to hop right back into camp for a guy like Yoel Romero. That seems very reasonable to me.
I see him drunk in Vegas and those in like an English flag underwear, having a great time.
Yep.
I think he's going to make a giant payday, and that's good for him. I get it. There's a real argument. There's a real argument that there shouldn't be champions. I've heard this argument before, and I've entertained it, and I've actually brought it up myself. That really what we need, instead of this idea of a belt, is just match the best fighters against the best fighters and have these cards. Like if you had an amazing card like UFC 200, but there was no title fights, you didn't call them title fights. You just had the fight. If you just had Conor McGregor versus Rafael dos Anjos or whoever it would be, do you really? How much is that? How much is that title of champion weighing on your decision whether or not you're going to be enjoying it, or whether or not it's going to be interesting, or whether or not it's important?
I actually think it's extremely important, because when you look at like a matchup like McGregor and Rafael dos Anjos, why are they big? It's dos Anjos because he won the title. He was considered a champion. He was considered the best of his weight class. With Conor, even as he was coming up with his personality and everything that went with it, and the great knockouts, he was chasing a dominant champion in Jose Aldo. That was always sort of the underlying story, and that's why I get a little worried about the future of this sport. I get it. I get why they're putting on big fights, and I can't even say that if it wasn't my company and I was wearing the suits and I was trying to make numbers meet, that I wouldn't be doing the exact same thing. But I think long term, if you take away the significance of your titles, you're taking away a lot of what keeps the UFC running. It's just that storyline of like, this is what these guys are going for. They're going for that one That is the end of the tunnel. That's the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what they're all chasing. So all the storylines sort of play off of that. And then once they won it, then you can create those fun fights. Like GSP, Michael Bisping, if there's no title attached to it, everyone's still watching that fight. But you have to sort of get there first. You have to be those, like, you can sell that storyline of two former champions or two champions, super champions, whatever the case is. I still think it's a sport that's based on being number one at the top. And then those storylines start to percolate from that.
I agree with you, and I also disagree with you. I agree with you in that I think that, it is a great thing to be the champion. And when Conor McGregor, when he beat Eddie Alvarez and he wanted those two belts on him, and he wanted to be the champ.
Yeah.
He had this this idea in his mind. I get it. I get why people are interested in that. But on the other hand, I look at it and I just want to see interesting fights. On the other hand, what is it? What's important to me? I mean, maybe I'm a little jaded, or maybe I'm just like too deep in the sport. But I don't. When you have things like interim titles, as soon as you have an interim title, and then you have an interim title like they were going to do with Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, that's a fight where the guy just won the title. I mean, he just won the title a couple of months ago. And then all of a sudden you're having an interim title? Like, what are you doing? Like, either the guy vacates the title or he doesn't. Like, this whole interim thing, like, I don't understand what an interim title I get an interim title if a guy's injured. And he had, like, the Dominic Cruz situation. He has a significant layoff, and he wants they want to give someone else a chance to establish the fact that if Dominic Cruz cannot come back, this is your new champion. Or the John Jones situation, where they stripped him of his title, and you have this, this situation where when he comes back, they give him a shot at the interim title. I get all those things. I get it. I mean, it makes sense to me. But what I want to see is interesting and exciting fights. That's all I want to see. And it doesn't matter. John Jones and Daniel Cormier fought tomorrow, and there was no title on the line. The UFC just decided, look, forget titles. It wouldn't mean anything to me. I'm just curious as to see how they're going to match up. Same with the new fight with him and Rumble. I just want to see how they match up. That's what I want to see.
I think you're right. You don't need a title to know that a Wolf against Arian Foster is an awesome fight.
Exactly. We have an interim human versus canine championship of the world.
Dude, I'm so obsessed with this, and I saw you're having Arian Foster on. I cannot wait to hear this discussion. But can we get a preview, like your preliminary thought? That could not go well for Arian Foster, right?
I don't think he understands what a wolf is. I think the real problem is that wolves look like dogs. It looks like a dog. And, how dogs listen and behave, and you're like, man, I'll kick that dog right in the face. That dog's not going to get me. I don't think people really understand what a wolf is capable of doing. A friend of mine just got some images from some people that he knows in Kazakhstan. He's a flexibility coach, and he went to Kazakhstan to do some work with some people, some MMA fighters over there, and they sent him some pictures of these wolves that torn apart these dogs that these people own. And when you see, like, a dog, literally a big dog, like a bulldog, like an American bulldog, bitten in half from a wolf, when you hear that a wolf can bite with a bite that's 5 times harder than a pit bull. I mean, most people don't know that. 5 times harder. I mean, the pit bulls are the scariest dogs, right? Everyone's scared of a pit bull's bite. A wolf can bite 5 times harder than that. They tear apart moose bones. I mean, they can snap through a moose's femur. I mean, it's just not what you think it is.
Man.
It is a pure killing machine, and they're so fast. Like, his idea that he's going to grab it by the neck, it's going to tear apart that soft tissue all around your arms so quickly. Your arms will be useless in a couple of snaps, and then that's a wrap. Your body is basically a water balloon, okay? Your body is a giant blood water balloon with this really smushy, soft membrane called skin that's keeping all that blood from pouring out onto the ground. And you're not a wolf. You're not an elk. That wolf is going to snap at you, and your skin is going to tear open like wet toilet paper.
I hear you. I hear you describing this. And it's like, Wolf would do this to a dog. And my reaction to it is, of course it would. It's a damn wolf. You know? Who doesn't know this?
No, Arian Foster said.
Who sits around here and says, like, oh, wolf? Besides Arian Foster, I guess a lot of people, but that is insane to me.
He said he can Google a wolf's weaknesses and a wolf can't Google his, which I was like, I don't think that's going to help.
That is an advantage. I guess you look for advantages where you can get them. Hey, Joe,
I don't understand what he's thinking. I really don't understand it.
I know we got to let you go, man. We really appreciate the time. The last thing I wanted to ask you about before we let you go is how has this lightened schedule been for you? You know, you were doing.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's like I
enjoy it.
It's like we hear a fighter say, you know, I'm not sparring as much in the gym anymore. It's added years to my career. I think I'm going to be doing this for a lot longer. Is that what it's doing for your commentating career?
Yeah, I do too many things. I'm very, very fortunate. And one of the things that I'm very fortunate at is that I have these interests. I have things that I really enjoy doing, whether it's doing stand-up or doing podcasts or doing commentary for the UFC. I really enjoy doing all these things. And they're, it just so happens that 3 of them are jobs for me. So I'm very busy. And when I was doing too many UFC broadcasts, it was just too much traveling. The traveling was the hardest thing. When you're flying to Brazil and you're flying to Australia and you're flying to England, and your body just gets screwed up. I mean, the time changes, the jet lag, the constant travel. I think one year I traveled 24 weeks for the UFC. We did 24 events, and I was so burnt out. It was like every other week I was flying, and I just was my body was like suffering from the effects of it, and I was getting drained. And it wasn't that I didn't enjoy the fights. Once I was actually there and sitting down, I enjoyed it. But I have children, and I have a family, and I have other obligations, and it was too much for me. And I'm just really thankful that the UFC has guys like Brian Stann now and Kenny Florian and now Dominic Cruz and Daniel Cormier have been sitting in with me as well, doing commentary, which I really, really enjoy. So it's nice for me. I want to get down. I like to do like 10 a year, like a little bit less than 1 a month, and I'm good.
Yeah, it sounds like a perfect amount. And, I wasn't sure about the 3-man booth because just those words, the 3-man booth, sometimes it can be disastrous. But after listening, especially this last one with Cruz and yourself, breaking down that fight that a lot of people didn't understand, and they're like, what is this? These 2 guys are just kind of standing there. I thought it was very good. So, hey, man, once again, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing your Wolf Talk with Arian Foster later today and and seeing you at a UFC card soon. Thanks again.
My pleasure, man. And we'll do this again when I have some more time. We could have. I think we probably talk for hours. There's so many different things to talk about.
Absolutely. Sounds great to me. We'll do it soon.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right. See you, Joe.